Good morning, everyone. Good to see all of you here this morning. If you're visiting with us, I know you've already been welcomed, but let me personally welcome you again. And at the end of the sermon, if you have any questions that you have and would like to sit down and talk about the lesson, then I'd certainly be happy to sit down and spend some time with you discussing the lesson itself. Anyway, it's good to see all of you. It's nice to be able to see all of you clearly without being blurry out there with new spectacles and new eyes and all. So that's a really good thing. Let me make you aware of just a couple of things. Number one, let me remind you about an announcement that I didn't hear last week, but I just discovered it this morning, and that is we're having a meeting today at 4 o'clock to talk about what are some ways that we might go about encouraging our congregation. So that's at 4 o'clock, and I think Jerry Coleman is going to lead that discussion. And then let me remind you about our Ocean Bridge mini seminar that we're going to have on the 16th of this month. And it's going to be taught by Marcus McKee from World Bible School. And he's going to come here and share with us how we might get involved in World Bible School using the Ocean program. You know, we talk a lot about growing and evangelizing, and this is probably one of the easiest ways that you can possibly imagine evangelizing or reaching out to those who are lost. It has hardly any rejection rate whatsoever. It does take some perseverance on your part. Won't cost you any money, and so it's going to be a good thing. And so I'd encourage you that if you really want to carry out the Great Commission, this might be one of the ways that you can do so without it being frightening or fearful for you. One of the most difficult things about evangelism is not necessarily studying with people, it's finding people who want to study with you. Well, these are already ready-made contacts that are going to be sent to us that you can participate in. So let me encourage you to be a part of that. Over the beginning of the year, I began talking to you about our theme is pressing on. And we talked about pressing on in a lot of different areas of our life. And as you looked at Philippians, the third chapter, Paul says, I forget what lies behind me, and I press on to what lies before me. And so he wasn't looking back over his past life or even any of his achievements, but he's looking at what is before him. And one of the things that he is committed to is he is committed to knowing Jesus more intimately. He wants to know that. He just doesn't want to know about him. He wants to know him in a very personal and intimate kind of way. And so he becomes an example to us. We too want to know him better, and so that's part of the challenge that we have been having is to be committed to knowing him better and drawing closer to him. Then he says, I press on for the prize of the upper call of God in Christ Jesus. So Paul is saying that he is committed to making it to heaven and into eternity itself, that's going to be his goal, that he knows that life here is a short span of time. Sometimes it seems long because we're going through various difficulties, but in the large scheme of things, life goes by pretty quickly. And there's just a small blip when you compare it to what eternity is about. And so this morning, I want to talk to you about committing yourself toward eternity, to be thinking about what eternity is about. So how do you define eternity? Well, actually, for human beings, it's almost impossible for us to do so. Eternity is time without a beginning or end. It's an infinite amount of time. In fact, in eternity, when you're living in eternity, there is no time. There is no beginning. There is no end. There is just what it is in eternity. And we're all going to spend eternity someplace. I mean, life itself proves us that we all die, that there is a time in which you live, but then there is a time that comes to an end for us. So when referenced religiously speaking, eternity is the timeless state following death or the afterlife, or what we might call immortality. And so have you thought about eternity? Have you thought about what is beyond this life? And if you really get down to cases, it would be this. Have you thought about where you are going to be 1 minute after you die? 1 minute. Life, you see, can change very quickly. Life can be going along really well, not having a lot of problems, maybe feeling a lot of joy and happiness, and all of a sudden you get some news that rocks your world. Either news for yourself or news for someone that you love or someone that you care about that causes you to get real sober about life, to really think about what is really important in life. Take, for instance, this man who is behind me. His name is Jimmy Valvano. Jimmy Valvano was at the top of his game in NCAA basketball. He was a coach for a number of colleges, but one that probably put him on the map was North Carolina. He took a team that was not supposed to exceed or to achieve in the NCAA double ranks in basketball, but he took that team and he led it to a national championship. It was an incredible thing. If you've ever heard Jimmy Valvano speak, then you see that he is an incredible motivator, an excellent speaker. He can really move you along. In fact, he was so good that after he retired from being a coach, he went into broadcasting, and he would broadcast with Dick Vitale, he was a basketball broadcaster as well as, or a basketball commentator. And the two came together, and they worked together, and they were called the Killer V's because both their names ended with V. He was incredible. He said things were going great with him until he got the news. And the news that he got was that he had cancer. And the cancer that he had, he said, was a terminal thing. So he knew time was at hand and that it was soon to come to an end. And he said, you think that life is all about basketball and winning championships and achievement. He goes, but at the end of the day, those things mean very little when you find out that you're going to die. All of a sudden, life comes into perspective and you find out what it really means to live life, and that life is not about those things. Life really is about people. Life is about people that you love and that you care about and that you rub shoulders with in his life. In an ESPY award ceremony, he was given the top rank there. And there in his speech, he implored his audience to laugh, to cry each day. And then he announced the Jimmy V Foundation for Cancer Research. And his motto was, don't give up, don't ever give up. Here are some of his words. I urge all of you to enjoy your life, to the precious moments you have, to spend each day with some laughter and some thought, to put your emotions, get your emotions going, to be enthusiastic every day. And he says, if you do those things, you will have a full day and you'll have a good day. And so he said these words, when it comes to living or dying, don't give up, don't ever give up. So he made that speech that was an incredible speech that you might get online sometime and listen to it. It was great. 2 months later, Jimmy V would die of cancer. An incredible story when you think about it. When you get the news like life comes into perspective. Several years ago, Tim McGraw came out with this song, Live Like You Were Dying. The song was about a man who gets the news that he too was dying. And he's telling this friend about it, and the man says to him, what are you going to do, or what did you do? And he said, I went skydiving. I went Rocky Mountain climbing. I went 2.7 seconds on a bull named Fu Manchu, and I loved deeper, and I spoke sweeter, and I gave forgiveness that I've been denying. And I said to him, someday I hope you get the chance to live like you were dying. The truth of the matter is, you don't have to wait for that news. I've got news for you this morning. You're dying. Doesn't matter how old you are, you're dying. Some of you will die very quickly. Some of you will die some time away from now. Sometimes you may be a ways out there for you. But no matter how old you are or who you are, you're going to die. You young people, you're going to die. You middle-aged people who are all into your businesses and have you great jobs and you're raising your families, you're going to die. You old people, you're going to die. We're all going to die. That's where we're all headed. It's not a pleasant thing to think about, but it's a fact. Some years later, after this song was written, Rob Reiner came out with a motion picture called The Bucket List. In that movie there are two people who play a huge role. I think it was Morgan Freeman and who's the other guy's name? Who? Okay, you got to talk louder than that. Yeah, Jack Nicholson. So they were the key characters in it, and they both got the news that they had cancer and that they were terminal. Well, of course, Jack Nicholson, he is a super wealthy guy, so he's got all kinds of money, and so he's laying on his bed, and he's writing down a list of things that he wanted to compress into his life, a bucket list of the things that he wanted to do. And so when you ask, what did these guys do? Well, they went skydiving. They didn't get on any bulls. They didn't go Rocky Mountain climbing. They climbed the Himalayas. And then they did a bunch of other things. And as I listened to that song, To Live Like You Were Dying, and a bucket list, I got to think to myself, these words, I got thinking how shallow human beings are. How shallow we are. How shallow is our thinking. Well, why would I say that? Well, why upon receiving news that you're dying would a person feel like he'd need to go skydiving or Rocky Mountain climbing or to climb on a bull? Why would you feel the need to do that? And the answer to that is because they are so earthbound with no view of eternity. They're going to try to take and compress all of life as they possibly can into some moments and some experiences in their life because they have no view of what is beyond, if they have any view whatsoever. So this is all that life has for them, and so they try to press it in. Now, am I saying that you shouldn't have a bucket list? I'm not saying that. Understand that. I mean, listen, if you want to go Rocky Mountain climbing, if you want to go jump on the back of a bull named Fu Manchu, then that's up to you to do that. But don't compress your life into just saying, I've got to do those things so that my life is a fulfilled thing, because life is more than those things. There was another hit movie, or hit TV series, The Lonesome Dove. And in the Lonesome Dove series, Clary McAdams, which at one time was Augustus McCrae's love interest, she's married to a horse rancher, and he dies. And now her ranch hand, a fellow by the name of Cho, he's out there and he's digging a grave. She comes out early in the morning while he's digging the grave. He's down in the grave digging a hole there, and she brings him a cup of coffee, and he crawls out and they sit on the side of the dirt there, and she asked him, Cho, what do you think happens after you die? And his answer was, not too much. I think nothing. And I thought to myself, how dismal that is. Nothing? That's it, that there is 63 years in a grave, or 15 years in a grave, or 90 years in a grave, and that is it. That's what drove me to the cross. That's what drove me to think about what God was about, to think to myself, I'm 18 years old. Is this all there is to life? Playing football and baseball and having a girlfriend, and is that all there is to life? Isn't there more to life than 63 years in a grave? And they got me thinking about eternity, of what is beyond this life. People like that, they have no view of how grand, how majestic, how wonderful heaven is. You can't even put it into words. Paul tried to maybe explain what the third heaven experience was like, and he says, I can't even do that because you probably wouldn't believe me if I were to tell you. Think about James Coulter. James Coulter was one of the first white men into the Yellowstone area. When he came back and he told them about the geysers and the mud pits and all the incredible wonders that were around, they all thought he was lying. Because it was beyond their experience, it was beyond their imagination. Well, that's what heaven is about. Paul, as he talked about heaven, he put it this way: things which the eye has not seen and ears has not heard, and which have not entered into the heart of man, all that God has prepared for those who love him. You can't imagine it. You can't think of how glorious it's going to sound, or what you're going to see, or what you're going to experience. Paul's saying, this is so fantastic. This is so incredible, so majestic, that you don't want to miss those things. But a person who is in chase of what this life is about is going to find themselves coming up very short. Jesus said, do not be afraid. As he just told them that he's going to die, do not be afraid. You believe in God, believe also in me. In my Father's house are many dwelling places. If it were not so, I would have told you, but I go away to prepare a place for you, that where I am, there you might be also. He's talking about a home in heaven, in God's house, that is prepared for those who love him and those who follow after him. Here's what I'm thinking. I'm thinking that once we embrace eternity, that is, once we recognize that we are eternal beings, that we are going far beyond this life, it will change the way we view the world and all the allurements and all the bangles and whistles that is out there for us, telling us you need to have those things, you deserve these things, you need these things in order to be happy. I'm just telling you, when you view eternity in that way, you'll find out that maybe all the things that we think this is really not. Everything will change in terms of our priorities concerning our relationships, from family to friends to total strangers, things, stuff, time, money, and yes, even life itself. Once you get this idea into your heads that you have just a small time here on this earth to prepare what is out before you in eternity. For many, the quality of life is measured in terms of accumulating stacks of stuff and achieving high positions and power, eating the world's best food, drinking the world's best wine. Sometimes we get to think that's what defines the abundant life. But maybe that's not the abundant life. In fact, I would say to you, that is not what quality of life is about. When eternity is left off the screen, all life is compressed into a distorted assumption that this is all that we have. And here's the point. What we have is never enough. If you go to Disneyland once, you'll want to go twice. And if you go twice, you'll want to go a third time. And if you go a third time, you'll go the fourth time. If you like hunting trips and you enjoyed that hunting trip, then you'll go the first time, but you'll go the second time, and you'll get the third time because it's never enough. And if you buy a new car, that new car will wear out and you'll want another one. And if you buy a new house, that house will wear out and you'll want another one. It never seems to be enough. You have a great steak dinner. One steak dinner is not enough. You'll want to have a second one. Same thing with a lobster. I'm just saying to you that life is never enough when you compress it into just this world alone. There's much more beyond what is happening right now in our lives. For followers of Jesus Christ, there should be much, much more to life than owning a bunch of stuff and going through life looking for one next high or next experience after another. There's more to that. Please don't misunderstand. I'm not saying that you shouldn't enjoy your stuff, okay? God gives us wealth so that sometimes we can buy stuff. And he's not saying that you shouldn't experience the things of this life, because there's a tremendous amount of experiences. And if you like just nature itself, God created nature, and he wants us to enjoy and to have happy lives. But he doesn't want us to get so focused on this that we don't know that there is that which is out beyond this, that life is a preparation for eternity. That's Paul's view. Paul lived his life, and he says, I'm already being poured out like a drink offering, and the time of my departure is at hand. He's at Maritime prison. He's getting ready to have his head severed from his body. And he says, but I have fought the good fight. I finished the course. I kept the faith. Henceforth there is laid up for me a crown of righteousness, which the righteous Lord or judge will award to me on that day, but not to me only, but to all those who have loved his appearing. What is Paul saying? Paul's saying, this is a short span of my life. I've committed my life to knowing Jesus and to spending eternity with him, and I'm looking forward to my reward. Life is more than just what is happening right here. So here's what I believe. Two things. Number one is this. I believe that a correct view of eternity will change the way we look at life. It really will. When we look at eternity, when we realize this is but a blip of time, that eternity is out there before us, it will change the way we look at life. I mean, think about that. What's the most important thing in your life right now? If I were to ask you to lay back your head and just relax, and we're going to take 5 minutes and just think about this. What's most important in your life right now? What's most important in your life right now? What would it be? I mean, what would it be? Especially when you think about what Jesus said over in John, the 10th chapter and verse 10. There he says, the thieves come to steal, kill, and destroy. I came that you might have life and that you might have it in abundance. So the question is, well, what does the abundant life, what is it? What is the abundant life? What's it all about? What does it consist of? Well, I would say this, the abundant life consists of then and now. Okay, that's weird, Richard. What do you mean then and now? It will change the way you look at people in your life now. In view of eternity, it will change. If you knew your life was going to come to an end, how would you look at people in your life now? I'm talking about your family. I'm talking about your husband. I'm talking about your wife. I'm talking about your children, your parents. I'm talking about your aunts and uncles and your cousins. I'm talking about your grandparents. I'm talking about your dear friends. How do you look at these people? And how do you treat them? How do you talk to them? How much do you want to be with them? How do you treat the people right now in your life? The people that you work with, the people that you go to school with. How does it change life right now in view of people? Because at the end of the day, people are what the abundance of life is about. Knowing Jesus and knowing people that are in your lives and then treating them well and loving them and caring for them. Secondly, I think a view of eternity will change the way you look at a person. So what person is this? I'm talking about Jesus Christ. How do you view him? Jesus said after he said that I'm going away to prepare a place for you, and they asked him, Lord, we don't know where you're going. He says, I am the way, the truth, and the life, and no man comes to the Father by me. Jesus, where is the Father? The Father is on his throne in heaven. Where is that? That's in eternity. What is he saying? The only way into eternity to know God and have a great relationship with him is to know that I am the way to get there. I am that way, the truth, and the life, and no man comes to the Father without having a relationship with me. That's the then. That's the only thing that really matters in terms of living the experience and the abundant life, is that to know Jesus, to get to heaven, and then to bring as many along with us as possible. That's our family. That's our friends. That's even strangers that maybe we will come into contact with. It will change your life in terms of the things that preoccupy our lives. So what is it that preoccupies your life? What is it that fills up your life? Here's what Jesus said in Matthew, the 6th chapter, verses 19 through 21. He says, do not lay up treasures on earth where moth and rust destroy and thieves break in and steal it from you, but lay up treasure in heaven where moth and rust do not destroy. Thieves do not break in and steal it from you. For where your treasure is, there will your heart be also. So Jesus, where we lay our treasure up? Lay your treasures in eternity. Lay your treasures in heaven, because that's what's really going to be important to you. 2 Peter, the 3rd chapter, verses 11 through 14, because of time. In that section of Scripture there, he says, seeing that this world in which we live is going to be destroyed with abundant heat, and that the firmament is going to melt. In other words, he says, those things are going away. He says, since these things are to be this way, what kind of people are we to be in holy conduct and godliness? What should our behavior be like if that is true? Well, there are two practical ways: holy conduct and godliness. I was looking at a fellow who was writing about that, and I said, okay, well, how did he differentiate holy conduct from godliness, and how would you do that? Well, holy conduct, it has to do with actions. Godliness has to do with your attitude, how you go about doing the things that you're doing. Holy conduct is going to have to do with the way you live your life. Godliness has to do with the spirit in which you live your life. Holy conduct has to do with what are the rules that guide your behavior. Godliness are the rules that guide your heart. Get your heart right, and the rest comes along with it. When God is at the center of your heart, when He's on the throne of your heart, it will change those things. That's how you change eternity. So when you think about it, the correct view of eternity is this. It will change how you look at your life, how you live your life. Here's the second thing. A correct view of eternity will change the way you look at death. When we look at death as human beings, it's frightening for us. Scares us to death. Yet someone has said this, that, in death, one guy, I think it was one of the Robertson brothers from Duck Dynasty, he was talking to a young boy who was dying, and he was asking him, is it going to hurt? He says, it doesn't hurt to die. Maybe getting to it's got a lot of pain, but dying doesn't hurt. Why? Is it because you go from physical existence to an eternal existence. If you die and you're in Christ, you wake up in the arms of Jesus. If you die and you're outside of Christ, you wake up in eternal torment. I mean, life is hard, but it doesn't have to get harder. Live life now with an expectation and getting ready for eternity itself. It'll change the way you look at death. So think about this. The way we look at death is so different from how God views it. God, when He talks about death in Scriptures, He uses different words than we use. When we think of death, we think of finality. We think of it being the end of association. We think of it as being something that is terrifying and is scary. God doesn't look at death that way. God, He looks at things differently. Jesus talked about death being looked at like a wedding. How many of you like going to weddings? How many of you have been to weddings? I've done hundreds of weddings over the years. Over the years, I've seen all kinds of brides walk down the aisle. I've never seen an ugly bride. If I ever see one, I'm not going to tell her. But I've never seen an ugly bride. Why? Because weddings are a beautiful thing. Look at what Jesus said. Let us rejoice and be glad and give glory to him. For the marriage of the Lamb has come and his bride has made herself ready. You know who the bride is? That's us. He's talking about the church. He's talking about you and me. We are the bride of Christ. And there are no ugly brides, remember? And so when the Bible talks about death, it sees it as a great wedding. Death is like sitting down at a wedding banquet with God. In Matthew, the 22nd chapter, verses 1 through 14, the master throws a huge banquet. He sent out invitations. There are 3 groups that have accepted the invitations, but when the banquet starts, they have all kinds of reasons for why they're not going to come. So the master says, go out into the highways and the byways. Go out into the hedges and the roads and bring in the people. Go out and get the lame and the blind and the deaf and the dumb and bring them into the banquet. What is he saying? He's saying everyone's invited to the banquet. It's your choice whether you want to come to the banquet or not. But that's how he sees death. He doesn't see death as the end of things. He sees it as a wedding. He sees it as a great banquet that everyone is invited to it. So God says, come and feast with me for all eternity. Banquets are a time of joy, of happiness, of fellowship, of celebration. And God says that's what death is going to be like. It's going to be like coming to a banquet. So all of us enjoy the holiday season because it has to do with Thanksgiving. How many of you like having Thanksgiving? Having Thanksgiving with your family where you sit down around a banquet. Or Christmas, you sit down around a banquet. And if you're my family, we're always looking for some reason to sit down around the table and enjoy each other's company because it's fun. We enjoy it. And that's what heaven is going to be like. Death is like going home. John 14 and verse 1 and following, remember Jesus says, I go away in my Father's house are many dwelling places. I go away to prepare a place for you that where I am, that you might be also. 2 of the greatest words in our language is the words going home. At the end of a hard work day, you want to go home, get in your easy chair, and just relax and then just enjoy the evening. It's been hard. I think I'll go home. It's a time to be there, to be in the midst of those that you feel safe with and loved by. And you know you have a share in that home. Dying is going home. I mean, for us who are left behind, it doesn't feel great. I know that, okay? But for the dead, it's going home. It's going to a wedding. It's a feast. That's how God views death. He doesn't view it the way we view it. It's a graduation. Matthew 26 and verse 21 says, well done, thy good and faithful servant. Enter into the joys of your master that has been prepared for you from all eternity. That's been promised to us. I was reading a story about a preacher who had just graduated from college and university. It's on a hot August afternoon, and they are all gathered in their stands, and there's a stage there where the graduates are going to receive their diplomas. And he says, I remember that day so clearly in my mind. He goes, I remember walking up on the stage. It's hot and it's smuggy, but I was excited because across the way was the president, and he had a diploma in his hand. And when I walked up, he says, well done. Now go and preach the gospel to all the world. He says, and I took my diploma in my hand. And I was so excited about it. I remember as I walked up, I opened it up and looked at it. Sure enough, it was there. And he said, as I looked at my diploma, I recognized that it represented all the long hours of study and all the memorization of Bible passages and getting ready for tests and writing papers and all kinds of things that happened while I was in school. As he looked at it, he says, it represented a lot of really hard work. And as I walked off the stage, I was standing by a fellow student. And he said to him, man, I can't believe it. I made it. I did. I made it. Look, let me see yours. And the guy opened up his diploma binder, and inside his binder was no graduation diploma. It wasn't there. And he says, where's your graduation diploma? And he says, I'm not graduating tonight. They're allowing me to walk through the exercise. I still have work to do. They're giving me a couple of weeks. I have some tests I have to finish. I have some term papers or papers I have to turn in, and if I do all those things, then the graduation diploma will be given to me. But tonight I didn't graduate. And the young preacher said to himself, and I said to myself, wow, I knew him. I studied with him. For all these years we've been together with one, and one graduates, and one doesn't. In view of eternity, think of those words. One graduates, and one doesn't. Good people, you're headed into eternity. You're going to live forever. Not in this physical life, but you're going to live forever. And you're going to live forever in eternity, one place or another, either in heaven with God or in hell with the devil and his angels. And that's a place you just don't want to go. I saw this, I think it was on Facebook, but it shows a line going to heaven or going somewhere. And it says these words, you probably can't see it, but it says, this stopped me in my tracks. Every minute someone leaves this world behind. We're all in the line without knowing it. We never know how many people are before us. We cannot move to the back of the line. We can't step out of the line. We cannot avoid the line. So while we wait in line, make moments count, make priorities, make time, make your gifts known, make a nobody feel like somebody, make your voice heard, make the small things big, make someone smile, make the change, make sure you are saved, make up, make peace, make sure you tell your people they are loved, make sure you have no regrets, make sure you're ready. Beloved, where will you be 1 minute after you die? Where will you be 1 minute after you die? Because there is life beyond now. I hope you're ready. If you're not, and you'd like to talk about that this morning, then I would be happy to sit down and talk to you about how you can get yourself ready for eternity, how to come into a relationship with Jesus Christ. If you're not, if you are a Christian, and maybe you've got your priorities out of whack, and you've put too much emphasis on the things of this world, let me encourage you to think above, to lift your eyes above, where Christ Jesus is seated at the right hand of God, and that you make sure that you're ready for eternity itself. So the lesson is yours as well as your response while together we stand and while we sing, won't you come?